Morning, and welcome to a beautiful, and I really mean beautiful, sunny day somewhere on the continent. So yes, you guessed it, I'm not at home, I'm not in the studio. I've decided this year to take a lot of mini breaks to try and retain my sanity while all the craziness is going on around me. So here I am. I've been here for a couple of days, and it is absolutely gorgeous weather. I know the UK is sort of basking in sunshine, but believe me, it is really hot here. In fact, actually, it's getting close to the temperatures I was seeing when I was in Jamaica. So that tells you how hot it is. Anyway, a couple of questions were asked. I thought I'd use this as an opportunity to answer them because I can't do any demos or anything with keyboards or other pieces of technical equipment. So the first question, why do I have so many synthesizers? And I know I've answered this lots and lots of time in the past, but I'll give you an analogy. Yesterday I sat in a bar here and I watched England play Sweden. Okay? And for those who don't watch football, England won. So England are now in the semi-finals of the World Cup. And that's quite a big thing for England because we generally are quite dire at competing in major football tournaments, whether it be Euros or the World Cup. We're pretty dire at that. So for us to have made the semi-finals is quite a big thing. Anyway, the analogy I use is that England are doing nothing different to what they've always done. They're just doing it in a different way. And what I mean by that is Gareth Southgate took over this team, which was in disarray. It was full of big-name Premier League stars who earned lots of money, and were, there was probably quite a few egos in there as well. And he's got rid of all that, and he's gone out to the World Cup with a young squad, a fresh squad, and specifically no major egos there. There's no big star players. Well, they're all good players in their own right. They wouldn't be there otherwise. But he's taken a fresh approach. Okay? And that probably is why England are doing so well in this tournament, because there is no expectation on them. So, why do I have so many synthesizers? Right. So, I collect them. Right. No if buts or maybes, I'm a collector. I do collect legacy tech, and I make no bones about it. I love old synthesizers. I rotate them in and out the studio all the time. Okay, so from my perspective, that was why I started buying synthesizers. And yes, it's probably got a bit out of control, but hey ho, I can afford to do it, so I'm going to carry on doing it. I can afford to do so. The second reason why I use legacy synthesizers is it changes the way I do stuff. Because on my Kronos, I can probably do everything I need to do. On my Jupiter, I can probably do everything I need to do. But I don't. And the reason I don't is because that becomes too samey. And what I like to do is I like to change things up a bit. So I'll go back to my DX7 and I'll program a patch up on my DX7, which will be a different, it breaks the monotony. It makes you think in a different way. It makes you think creatively when you're doing that sort of stuff. I'll go to the D50, I'll go to the M1, I'll go to my D10, I'll go to, whatever keyboard it happens to be. I'll go there and I'll do something different. And again, I could go back and I could use the Kronos, I could use the Oasis, the Jupiter. All of these keyboards would do what I want to do. But it changes things up. It makes you think about something and take a fresh look at it. So that is one of the reasons why I have so many bits of kit floating around. Because it forces me to do things differently or think about how to do things differently. I'm hoping that sort of gives you an insight into my mind. Well, a real insight into my mind. But if it doesn't, yeah, we'll see. But that's the reason why I have so many synthesizers. So question 2. What does Korg actually mean by open architecture. And excuse the water running. There is actually a fountain just off to my, off to my left. Your right. Anyway, what does Korg mean by open architecture? Well, it's probably, funny enough, not what you think it means. I originally, when I saw the whole open architecture thing, I thought, well, that probably allows for other manufacturers to actually start to use the Korg synthesis platform. That's what I originally thought. But, and in a way, it probably is. But I suspect there is a proprietary element here that is stopping other manufacturers actually sort of stepping into this space. So, what did Korg mean by open architecture when they released the open architecture synthesis system? What they meant is it was going to be a software-driven synthesizer. That is what Korg mean by open architecture. So, in the Oasis, and I use the Oasis, the kernel is exactly the same. The machine itself is, as I said before, it's a computer. You open the board. If you open the machine up and look at the motherboard, you'll see a CPU, you'll see RAM, you'll see RGB outputs, you'll see USB outputs, you'll see I/O boards coming off it. It's a computer. There's no if, buts, or maybes. That's what it is. Okay, but it's a computer that runs Linux, and it runs a specific form of Linux, which is a real-time version of Linux. It's the same sort of real-time version of Linux that my company runs in its operational control systems, because that's what you want. And the reason why you run that sort of Linux is it means that, and if you've ever played an Oasis or a Kronos or one of the other top brand synthesizers from one of the other manufacturers at the moment, you'll notice that you can actually change the tone midway through playing. And the tone, your existing notes will carry on the old tone, and your new notes will carry on the new tone, and there'll be absolutely no break in the actual sounds that's being produced by the synthesizer. That's what the real-time bit gives you. It's that transition. So, what Korg actually mean by open architecture is that they can add features to the keyboard, but adding new software to the keyboard. That is their definition of open architecture. So when the Oasis came out, and I'll use the Oasis because that's the one I've been playing with most recently, it had the HD1, the CX3, and the STR engines on the actual machine, which is all well and good. And then over a period of time, what Korg then did is they then released, through software upgrades, the other software engines. So it's very similar to the whole approach we've got with computers and VSTs. You know, you go and buy a VST hosting program, you then go and buy the VST that you want, and you effectively load it in. Pretty much the same idea. That's what they do. And then, I say, Korg then over a period of time introduced the Mod 7, the LAC, the ESX 123, ESX3. You know, they all came in over a period of time. They were either introduced as part of the operating system and given to users, or they became optional extras to the users where they had to pay some money to get there. So that was the Korg's concept. Now, here's the thing: if you could get a software developer to understand what the open architecture was that Korg are referring to here, in terms of being able to load software into the kernel, they could write their own engines for this platform. Now, I think the reason why that hasn't happened is because I suspect there is some proprietary angle to this in terms of how you load the engines in. But you could get somebody to write a D50 engine, or I don't know, a Juno 60 engine, or there could be a lot of engines that you could write maybe not for the Oasis. Mind you, I haven't said that. The Oasis would be a cracking platform to put this on because it's no longer supported by Korg. It's now in legacy support. It's not an active keyboard. So, you could write these engines for that keyboard. And that would be superb. I can think of people who would pay to deploy those sort of engines on something like an Oasis. Can you imagine running a D50 on an Oasis? That would be absolutely awesome. Fully 88 keys, all the effect engines the Oasis has, the D50 sound or LA synthesis engine. That would be absolutely awesome. In fact, cool. Why don't you do an LA synthesis engine for the Kronos? Why am I not working for Korg in their R&D department? I don't know. But that would be phenomenal. The power that these machines have is phenomenal. It really is phenomenal. And I don't think, we've got studio techs and techs out on the road who are used to programming the sounds. But if you give them more engines to program the sounds from, can you imagine what would happen? I just think that whole thing would be awesome. The other thing about the real-time engine, of course, is the fact that you can, the way the whole sort of platform works is it compartmentalizes, rather as opposed to sort of the Windows platform, which is sort of loads of stuff loaded into memory all the time. With a Linux engine, it compartmentalizes trying to do this in a simple way because it's actually quite complicated, but effectively think of like lots of little boxes and swapping things in and out of the boxes all the time. You can actually have more effects being brought on board, more effect processing. There's a whole raft of stuff you could do in addition to the engines. Sequencing, the sequencing is really just limited by the amount of displays and memory you've got on the machine. But there are there's multitudes of things you can do with this machine, and I think the Oasis died too soon. But I understand why the Oasis died. And the Oasis, I think, died because they realised that the hardware that was in the Oasis needed a fairly major revision. I don't think it needed a fairly major revision in terms of architecture. I think it needed a major revision in terms of horsepower. Because the Kronos coming out it was 2 years after the Oasis finished, with the same engines on it, in essence, but far more horsepower. And I've got a 2. My 2 is far more horsepower than the original Kronos. So each revision, they've upped the horsepower, the amount of RAM. Mine's now got an SSD in it, whereas the Oasis is just a standard sort of SATA hard drive. The actual horsepower is upgraded, but they kept the architecture the same, which is how you can use the same patches on the original Kronos, the X, the 2, because the architecture itself is the same. It's just the horsepower has got more powerful as it like in keyboards, and I think that's probably the way they need to do that. So the other engine that would be really, really awesome, just thinking about this and looking down at my notes, an FM DX7 engine on an Oasis. Oh, I think that's probably enough to describe what they mean by open architecture. I haven't really seen it. I've not really played with any of the other high-end workstations that I would see as a threat to the Kronos. I've been offered, actually, funnily enough, I've been offered the Fathom to buy, and while I'm really, really tempted, I'm not sure I can justify how I would use that in my creativity process. In fact, I'm actually sort of thinking that whereas I rotate all my legacy synths in and out of the studio on a regular basis, I sort of wonder with the Fathom whether I should do that. Purely because I have the Kronos, I have the Jupiter, and I have the Oasis. I don't know, but I've not really played with like the Fathom, and there's a couple of other instruments out there of that ilk. see whether they have the same sort of idea in terms of being able to load new pieces of software into the machine without actually affecting everything else. That, I think, Korg have got absolutely spot on. I really do think, having done the research now to understand exactly what they mean, I think this whole open architecture idea is really, really spot on. It's just a shame that there's nobody else actually working with Korg to give us LA synthesis, FM synthesis engines, or specific keyboard style engines. Roland and them have disappeared off over the hill on the boutique range, but would be interesting. Anyway, that's this week's rant over and done with. Next week we'll be back in the UK. It'll probably be raining by then, I might add. In fact, next Sunday is the World Cup final, so I could actually be really heading down the pub to see England play, or not heading down the pub because I don't fancy seeing either Belgium or France, or who we're playing? Croatia, aren't we? We're playing Croatia on Wednesday. Croatia. So be it. Anyway, keep playing. See you next time.
So this is the point in the video where I turn around to you and say, if you enjoyed the contents of this video, please give it a thumbs up. It allows other people to find this content more easily that you have enjoyed. I'm sure by now, if you didn't like the content of the video, you've probably given me a thumbs down, but I'd prefer if you didn't. If you'd like to be notified about when I post additional content to this channel, somewhere about here should be the subscription icon. So please click on there and subscribe to the channel. Over here should be other content that you may enjoy that I've already done or posted to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again.